Hello and welcome! I'm the Pharaoh Nerd, and this is the second ever episode of Really Old News, covering the week of August 30th to September 4th. Remember to like and subscribe if you want to see more of it. Now, our first story today covers the discovery of a section of the ancient city of Alexandria. Over the span of 9 months, a section of ancient Alexandria, inhabited from the 2nd century BC to the 4th century AD, has been unearthed within the Al-Shatbi neighborhood in the center of modern Alexandria. The discoveries consisted of a main road connected to side roads by a sewage system. The area also featured over 40 rock-cut wells, rock-cut tanks used for water storage, and rock-cut cisterns. The artifacts unearthed include pottery, including amphorae, amulets, nearly 700 ancient coins, various tools like fishing nets, loom weights, and molds used in the production of statues of Alexander the Great, and statues of legendary figures that may have also been employed as amulets. However, the highlight of the digs is the discovery of an alabaster bust of Alexander the Great. According to Ibrahim Mustafa, who led the excavations, the area was likely a commercial center and residential area hosting a variety of market stalls and workshops, including those dedicated to producing statuary at what was then the outer walls of Alexandria. Rest houses for travelers waiting to get licenses to enter the city were also discovered, as well as facilities used for the most revolting, evil purpose I can personally think of: tax collection. The excavators are currently creating 3D photographs of the site and piecing together fragmentary statues. Now, the Al-Shatbi neighborhood of Alexandria also hosts one of the most important archaeological sites in the city, which contains its earliest archaeological remains, the Al-Shatbi necropolis. Located just a few hundred meters east of the new Library of Alexandria, not to be confused with the old one, it dates to the late 4th to early 3rd century BC, and as such is the testament to the lives of the first generations of Greeks to live within the great city of Alexandria. Unfortunately, ever since its discovery in the early 20th century, it hasn't fared that well. Even though, as recently as June of 2017, a new tomb was discovered in the necropolis, the tombs are filled with a thick layer of sand and even become flooded occasionally, which isn't exactly the best for the painted and relief decoration within them. Luckily, in March of 2020, a project aiming to restore, upgrade, and promote the site was begun, but I think they're unrelated to the team which unearthed the commercial area nearby. Next up, 2 bronze battering rams, also called rostrums, that once adorned the prows of Roman ships that took part in one of the most pivotal battles of Roman history, have just been dredged up off the coast of Sicily. The battle I'm referring to is the Battle of the Agadi Islands, also referred to as the Battle of the Agates, which occurred on March 10th, 241 BC, and ended up becoming the final battle of the 23-year-long First Punic War. It boiled down to a clash between Roman ships and Carthaginian ships attempting to resupply the Carthaginian land army on Sicily. A total of over 500 ships fought in this battle. Victory hinged on the ability to outmaneuver the enemy and ram the broad sides of their ships with their 200 kilogram or 450 pound bronze rostrums, and the Roman vessels had the upper hand. They were more agile than their Carthaginian counterparts because they only brought the bare necessities with them, while the Carthaginians were weighed down by supplies for sustained travel and provisions for their army on Sicily. The Carthaginian ships were also undermanned and had inferior rams compared to the ones made by the Romans, which bear inscriptions from judges affirming that they were made in accordance with precise engineering standards. By the end of the battle, the Romans had sunk 50 Carthaginian ships and captured 70 more. Their victory so complete that it resulted in the end of the war, as well as Carthage surrendering Sicily to the Romans and paying Rome war reparations. But the 2 rams are far from the only pieces of debris from this momentous battle that have been found so far. The location of the battle was first ID'd in 2010 after a fisherman dredged up one of the rams, and an archaeologist named Sebastiano Tusa apparently took notice. Since then, 270 square kilometers of the seabed north of Palermo and near the island of Ustica have been surveyed, and debris from the battle has been found in a 12-kilometer squared area, although the exact whereabouts haven't yet been revealed. A total of 25 rams have been found since the site's identification, which is all the more notable considering that they're extremely unusual finds. Only 2 not from this very battle have yet been discovered. These were found among the wrecks of the ships that once depended on them, one of which still contained jars that still had traces of wine in them. Hundreds of surprisingly dangerous lead slinger bullets, several bronze Montefortino-type helmets, and cheek pieces, as well as Roman and Hellenistic Greek coins, have also been discovered. The survey area also encompasses the wreck of a notably large shipwreck dating to the first half of the 4th century AD, carrying Iberian amphorae. These were all discovered thanks to the utilization of an AUV, autonomous underwater vehicle, which was used to map the seafloor, and an ROV, a remotely operated vehicle, which was used to investigate specific targets. The underwater excavations were conducted by, who else? Underwater archaeologists, specifically from the Soprintendenza del Mare Regione Siciliana, sorry if I didn't pronounce that right, the RPM Nautical Foundation, and the Society for the Documentation of Submerged Sites, or the SDSS. Although there were many more discoveries made this week, we're going to end off this episode of Really Old News with the fresh identification of a shipwreck under the Irish Sea. It really seems like this has been a good week for underwater archaeology, eh? The discovery is part of a program which aims to compile detailed lists of the ships that have sunk in the Irish Sea, led jointly by both Bournemouth University and Bangor University's School of Ocean Sciences. The program, led by Dr. Innes McCarthy of Bournemouth University, has already surveyed some 300 different wrecks using Bangor University's research vessel, Prince Madog. Using a combination of marine archives and high-resolution multi-beam sonar data, this ship, which was once thought to be a submarine, has been identified as the minesweeper HMS Mercury. The paddle steamer was commissioned by the London Midland Scottish Railway, I know that's a mouthful, and started life as a ferry on the River Clyde. I have no idea why a railroad company decided they had to create a ferry, but apparently they did. Upon the outbreak of the Second World War in 1939, the Admiralty requisitioned her, and her short career as a minesweeper began. I say short because it ended just over a year later on Christmas Day of 1940. On that day, it was sweeping an old British minefield off of County Wexford, Ireland, and near the Salty Islands, which are a pretty good name for islands in the ocean, eh? However, a mine got caught up in her sweeping gear, and it came too close to the ship, which resulted in it detonating under her stern. The boat was still afloat, though, so there was an attempt at towing it to Milford Haven on the west coast of Wales, but she was taking on so much water that the towing line couldn't manage to tow it any longer, and so the ship sunk. Luckily, the entire crew was rescued, although her commander was later court-martialed. And that does it for this week's episode of Really Old News. Stay tuned for next week.